Do you think you know what happens when someone dies? And if I told you that the first 3 hours after death, are they the most dangerous to the soul? Saint Brigida had a direct view of Jesus, and what he revealed to her contradicts everything you heard to this day, because death is not rest. It is the beginning of a court, of a battle, of an invisible war, and if no one is praying for you right now, maybe you never come back. Check it out now if you have already subscribed to the channel, because this video will disappear and you will never see it. Have you ever wondered what happens in the first few minutes after we die? Not in the body, in the soul. Do we feel? Do you see? Do you understand what is happening? Or is it just darkness? I thought death was the end. Silence, darkness, peace. But what they showed me, it was exactly the opposite. You know that feeling of being awake but arrested? To try to scream and no one hear? To run and not have legs? I lived it. And more than that, I was taken to a place where time is something else, where seconds saw eternity, where what you did screams louder than you believed. Do you want to know what happens when the heart stops? Want to know what I saw? You really want to find out what was shown to me in the first 3 hours after my death? Before you continue, pay attention. What I will tell you now is also in a free ebook that has been downloaded by thousands of people, but few understood what's inside. If you die today, do you know what will happen to your soul? This ebook reveals on biblical and spiritual basis what no one explains to you about death and the invisible world. Lo now, for free, before they take it down. The link is in the description, because then it may be too late. So don't look away now, because after you hear it, you will never be able to sleep the same way. Imagine now, Houston, Texas, 3:14 in the morning. The heart monitor whistled one last time. Emily Rose Martinez, 28, closed her eyes, and the room was silent. But seconds later, what the security cameras captured. No employee had the courage to watch until the end. Emily was not religious, grew up in a normal house. I worked as a nurse, attended the mall, enjoyed Marvel movies, and told everyone, when I die, only the lights. She thought it was all over there, but at dawn, death did not behave like a shutdown. She was the beginning of a revelation. Camera 2 of St. Mary Hospital recorded in night mode. In the video, which was later censored by the administrative sector, you can see Emily's body inert on the stretcher, but something moves above the chest. A thin mist, almost imperceptible, begins to climb slowly. It was not steam. It was not a reflection. It was not collective hallucination. It was the exact moment when Emily's soul was detached from the flesh. The doctor tried to revive. The defibrillator was used. 3 shocks. Nothing. But as they fought to save their body, Emily was standing next to her bed, without understanding, unable to speak, not knowing that I was dead. She looked around. He saw his own feet, tried to play the stretcher. It passed straight. He looked at his mother's face, and who cried in the next room holding a third. I couldn't even pray. Emily wanted to scream, "Mom, I'm here." But no sound came out, no movement, no touch, just the pain of seeing and not being able to do anything. In mystical vision, Saint Brigida described this moment with scary accuracy. At the time of death, the soul sees its body as if it were out, and everything that once seemed important, it doesn't matter anymore. The revelation of Brigida states that the first 3 hours after death are the most spiritually decisive. It is when the spirit begins to be judged. That's when the gates start to move. And that's when the enemy approaches. Emily moved by the hospital, crossed walls. I heard thoughts. I felt fear. Yes, fear. Because even without body, she knew something was approaching. The lights began to flash. The TV of the doctor's room called alone. And a nurse stated, days later, someone whispered my name on that duty. But I was alone. But Emily was not alone. A shadow followed her through the corridors. And where the shadow passed, the flowers of the reception wither. She tried to run, but there was no legs anymore. Tried to hide, but there was no place where the soul could escape the look of the invisible. And as men are ordered to die once, the judgment comes after that. Hebrews 9:27. Yes, the judgment started there. It was not in heaven, not even in hell. It was in the hospital, in the corridor where everyone slept. Emily was stuck between two worlds. And, as Saint Brigida saw in his revelation, The spirit of the person does not immediately go to his final destination. First, he is confronted with his own truth. Everything Emily did, start or to come back as flash, the abortion hidden, the words spoken with hatred, the mocking nights of faith, the songs that invoked what she didn't even believe exist, and sometimes God tried to reach her, but she laughed. She doesn't laugh now. A doctor came in to confirm the death. Time of death, 0319. Signed, closed the clipboard, and left. But Emily was still there. A light appeared. Yes, a light. In the corner of the room. Before she approached, someone more arrived first. From the corners of the wall, they drained shadows like oil, black eyes, invisible claws. They arrived. And according to what Saint Brigid wrote, in the first hour after death, demons approach to complain what they consider their own, and angels watch, waiting for one thing, the prayer of the living. But who was praying for Emily? Who knew she needed? Who knew that the battle had already started? Emily stepped toward light, but something grabbed his spiritual leg. She looked down and saw the fingers of a child, but the eyes, they were not human. Emily tried to scream, but there was no more mouth. It was like being alive, but without the right to exist. Emily still saw. I still thought, still felt, but it was no longer there. Everything around him seemed real, but there was a detail that denounced that the world she saw. It was no longer the same. The colors were cold, the sounds stuffy. People passed her without seeing her. She tried to touch the door. The hand crossed, tried to look at the ICU mirror, but the mirror ignored her. Where was the reflection? Where was it? She. The words of Saint Brigid, written centuries ago, echoed silently in eternity. In the first hour, the soul is surrounded by confusion and anguish, because it recognizes that it has left the flesh, but still does not understand what is happening. Emily tried to organize thoughts, but it was like being in a dream of which one cannot wake up. Everything was both familiar and strange. The room where she died seemed bigger. The shadows looked alive. And there were voices. Yes, voices. But they didn't come from the living. They came from somewhere else. Of the ceiling. From the floor. From inside itself. Some laughed. Others shouted. And one of them whispered his name. Emily. Emily. Back, Emily. It's not late. Emily, look at me. She sought where the voice came from. But wherever you look at it, I only saw the emptiness. The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, which he scans the whole interior of his being. Proverbs 20:27. Emily ran, or tried to run, but running in that state, it was like floating in despair. She passed the hospital wall and saw herself in the parking lot, the deserted street. A dog barked into nothingness, and a car, with a cross hanging from the rearview mirror, shone as she passed. It was as if the world reacted to his presence, but the humans, they were still blinded. She shouted, I begged, but her voice was made of thought, and the thought could not be heard by those who live in the flesh. And there began the real pain. Emily's soul realized that she was stuck between two worlds, the world of the living, who could no longer touch her, and the spirit world that was approaching too fast. She ran back to the hospital, and he saw his mother kneeling on the floor in the hallway. She said, God, I never talked to you before, but save my daughter, please. And at that moment, a wind cut the hallway. It was not a physical wind, it was spiritual. Emily's soul was pushed into the ICU again, but something had changed. The shadows were already inside. They no longer hid. 3 figures, high, lean, covered by a dark smoke. Emily tried to hide behind her own bed, but there was no hideout. One of them approached. His eyes, they were like living holes, and his mouth whispered memories. I was with you, in your teens. I made you believe it was just anxiety. I was the one who blows that song on your phone. It was me. I shut up your prayer even before you tried. Emily trembled, but your body didn't train. It was your soul. His soul was in a panic. She fell to the floor, a non-physical floor, and shouted inside him, Jesus, it helps me. And at that moment, everything froze. The shadows retreated, and a new presence entered the room. It was light, but not ordinary light. It was a presence that made the shadows writhing. It was peace, and and at the same time, sharp holiness. Emily tried to look but couldn't. She felt that something was measuring her soul, weighing everything. Each choice, every thought hidden, each is not that serious. And then, she heard, "You thought I didn't exist, but today, I'm here. For God will bring every work to judgment, even what is overwhelmed, whether it is good or bad." Ecclesiastes 12:14. Emily's soul knelt. She didn't know if this was God, an angel, or the beginning of the end, but I knew it wasn't ready. I didn't know. I get told me, pardon me, but as I cried on the floor of the spiritual ICU, the shadows moved again, more aggressive, closer. And as Saint Brigid wrote, "In the first hour demons accuse the soul, presenting unconfessed sins, unclean thoughts, and hidden vices. And now, Emily listened to every accusation as a stab: promiscuity, lie, idolatry, disregard, denial, for the spirit. The light began to go out. The room was dense. Emily's soul felt that she was being dragged, but before it was completely pulled, a new voice shouted inside her, "I still have promise about this soul." Emily was torn from that dimension and thrown into a dark field, with a throne at a distance and thousands of spiritual eyes looking at her. But in the middle of the way, someone started praying for her. Emily heard her own name, being called in a place where no one had a mouth. Everything was dark, but it was not a common darkness. It was an intelligent darkness. There was no ground, but Emily felt her weight on her feet. There was no ceiling, but something prevented her from climbing. And there was no echo because there, the silence was alive. She was thrown in that place as who is dumped without explanation. The spiritual body trembled. The soul burned. And for the first time, Emily felt she was facing something bigger than she ever imagined. The light that had previously appeared disappeared. Now she was in a dark field, and ahead, a throne floated in the void. It was not the golden throne that movies show. It was a throne of fire, but the fire did not burn. He judged. Around, thousands of eyes floated, watching, and next to the throne, rollers began to open. And it was then that Emily heard, "Bring her record. For it matters that we all appear before the court of Christ, so that each one receives what they did through the body, according to what practiced, good or evil." 2 Corinthians 5:10. She tried to run, but your soul was stuck to the acts themselves, every step in her in life. Now she held her there. And then a voice, which didn't seem human, began reading. Name: Emily Rose Martinez, daughter of Angela Martinez and Thomas Green. He had contact with God's word at 14. Rejected. He practiced fornication, spiritual mockery, light occultism by joke. He heard 7 invitations for salvation. Refused all. Emily cried. But the cry, it didn't stop reading. And the eyes, they kept observing it. In another point of the vision revealed by Saint Brigid, it is written, "The souls that have not prepared are confronted with their own acts, and the evil spirits who accompanied them in life appear to accuse them one by one." And they appeared. 3 figures emerged, the same that were around Emily in the hospital. But now, they spoke. "I was with her on the day of the hidden pact disguised as a tattoo. She said she didn't believe in hell, so I laughed and remained. She watched movies that invoked my name, unknowingly, and one of them touched Emily's spiritual chest. Touching, she felt something get out of her. A brand, an invisible scar, a door she had opened herself. She shouted, not with the voice, but with the spirit. "I didn't know, forgive me, I didn't know." And a voice answered, not the throne, but one of the accusers. "But you mocked, you laughed, you said, 'If God exists to prove me.'" Emily fell to her knees in the dark field, and at that moment, she saw her own birth. A sequence of visions began. The day your mother prayed for her in the womb. The first time he felt spiritual presence at the age of 9. The Bible given by your grandmother, who was thrown away. The night of the nightmare that made her wake up screaming, but she ignored it. The service you watched hidden on YouTube, and never ended. The court showed everything. There was no way to lie. The soul does not lie in the kingdom of the spirit. On the day of judgment, men will account for every useless word they have spoken. Matthew 12:36. And then, a new voice echoed, different from the others, neither sweet nor cruel, fair, She is still in the second hour. The sentence will only be given after the time of intercession. The eyes turned up, and Emily was pulled back, with violence, like those who fall into the abyss itself. And when you opened your eyes, he was back to the hospital, but not in the living world. It was in another spiritual room, a place where prayers turned into weapons. In the hospital corridor, his mother was still kneeling. She didn't even know what she said, but the sky understood everything, and every broken word, each tear, every sigh of despair. He gained shape in the invisible world, and a white figure emerged in the room, simple, faceless, but with authority. And when this figure touched the floor with his feet, the shadows began to scream, and one of the creatures said, "She can't be saved, she was ours." But the figure responded firmly, "She hasn't been sealed yet, and there's someone on her knees for her. Cry to me, and I will answer you, and I will announce you great and firm things you don't know." Jeremiah 33:3. Emily cried, but now something shone over her, a kind of cloak. The court was not over, but for the first time, she wasn't alone. And it was then that the angel whispered, "It's still an hour, and this, it's the most violent." A bell rang at the hospital. Someone new entered the emergency, but this patient came from the same place where Emily had returned. And when your eyes crossed in the spirit world, they recognized themselves. Emily was on her knees in the invisible dimension of the hospital, between shadows that accused her, and a light that was beginning to shine on her. It was the third hour, the most decisive, the most spiritual. Saint Brigid wrote, "In the third hour after death, the sky sends its messengers according to the cry of the living. It is the time when fate begins to define itself." And at that moment, someone cried out. Angela, Emily's mother, remained on her knees. Not knowing what to do, I just said repeatedly, "God, saves my daughter, save my daughter." She was a simple woman, never went to church, but at that moment she was more powerful than any pastor. Each word of it crossed invisible layers, and in the spirit world, gained shape. The words did not go out of the mouth, they left the soul. And that, the sky listens. In the hospital, a cold breeze passed through the corridor. The reception nurse looked around and felt chills. The lights blinked, the elevator locked. On the ICU floor, 3 patients began to cry at the same time, unknowingly why. And in the spirit world, the angels descended. The angel of the Lord camp around those who fear him and deliver them. Psalm 34:7. Emily, lying on the floor, saw the atmosphere change. The shadows retreated. The darkened atmosphere began to be torn by beams of light that came from above. They were swords, spiritual swords made of prayer. Every mother's cry she turned into a flaming blade. One of the angels, when touching it, said, "Hell complains it, but heaven still listens to her, because someone dared to cry out for her." And then the spiritual accusers began to scream, "She mocked you. She said everything was superstition. She heard the truth and chose the world." But the angel raised the sword of prayer, and an explosion of light silenced the screams. Emily didn't understand everything, but I felt that something was being decided. Her soul trembled, and then a book started to shine. A new book. It was the record of prayers she made throughout her life, the sincere, the forgotten, the ones she thought were never heard. And then, a memory came, a prayer made at the age of 12. "Jesus, if the Lord exists, don't let me die without knowing." This prayer shone as fire. "Before they call me, I will answer. Being still speaking, I will hear them." Isaiah 65:24. Emily fell on her face on the spiritual floor and said, "I'm not a decent, but I want to live, even if I have to start from scratch. Shows me that there is still time." And at that moment, the throne of fire appeared again. But this time, there were no eyes around. There were voices singing. It was not human music. It was sound of eternity. And a voice said, "She still has time. But it needs 2 things. Be remembered on earth. Choose with sincerity." And it was then that the unexpected happened. Downstairs, an elderly lady, patient of the wing of cardiology, felt a shiver. She didn't know Emily, but at that moment, God awakened her. And she said, alone in the room, "Sir, save someone in this hospital now." In the spirit world, that prayer fell as lightning. The floor trembled. The currents that held Emily broke down, and the figure who once accused her shouted in fury. No, she was ours. But the angels were already coming down with torches. Emily's soul was erected by light, and a new voice, soft, firm, powerful. He said, "You still have a body. You still have a choice. But if you don't use the right time, there's no other chance. Wake up, O you who sleep, and get up from the dead, and Christ will illuminate you." Ephesians 5:14. Emily was taken to a place between the body and the sky, like a suspended trial room. There she saw other souls, some waiting, other desperate, and others being taken in silence. And then he saw a young man. He looked at her and smiled sadly. "Do you remember me?" It was Lucas, a college colleague. He died in a motorcycle accident. "I also had 3 hours, but no one prayed for me," Emily cried. Lucas walked away and was taken by dark figures. She fell to her knees. "Give me one more chance. I don't want to be like him. I want to live. I want to choose right." And at that moment, the mother's last prayer crossed the heavens. "Sir, give her to me, even if it's for another day." And the angel shouted, "Then come back." Emily opened her eyes on the bed, but to repain, nothing was like before. Because when someone comes back from the spirit world, or come back with mission, or come back with brand, Jesus showed her what no one has ever returned to tell. Emily opened her eyes, but not as before. The ICU room seemed the same, but his soul saw things that natural eyes did not see. About each patient were lights, or shadows. Some moved, others were stopped, and one of them whispered the name of a nurse. She was trying to speak, but his voice was still stuck between the spirit and the flesh, until on the monitor next to the bed, a sentence appeared. It was not a technical error. It was not notification. It was a spiritual message. "Do you want to see what I showed the bridge?" And before I could answer, Emily was pulled. She was no longer in the hospital. Now it floated in a place without time. By his side, a female figure was waiting for her, dressed in white, with deep eyes like those of whom he saw his own end. She reached out and said, "I'm Bridge, and I was sent to show you what they still ignore. Certainly the Lord God will do nothing without revealing his secret to his servants, the prophets." Amos 3:7. What followed was indescribable. Emily crossed with a thin veil, made of time, memory, and eternity, and saw, yes, she saw, the soul corridor waiting thousands of souls, walking in circles, confused faces, eyes without direction. These are those who died without faith but without full awareness of evil. They are in court, waiting for cry, said Bridge. Some looked up, others to the floor, but no one knew where to go. Those who despised the signal. Another group, I cried in despair. They received the sign. They felt the touch. They heard the name, but they rejected. For pride, for fear, for mocking. And now, there's nothing to expect anymore. Completed Bridge. Emily recognized a face. He was a famous internet influencer. He mocked Jesus in the videos. He said, "He only believes in heaven who is afraid to live." Now, your soul was changed, without color, aimless. Before you continue, pay attention. What I will tell you now is also in a free ebook that has been downloaded by thousands of people, but few understood what's inside. If you die today, do you know what will happen to your soul? This ebook reveals, on biblical and spiritual basis, what no one explains to you about death and the invisible world. Low now, for free, before they take it down. The link is in the description, because then, it may be too late. The Valley of the Own, a green valley with strange flowers. There, souls sitting, being touched by light. These were sustained by prayer. Although they lived far away, someone cried for them, and the cry held them, said the saint. Emily cried, because you felt it was where it should be, but it hardly arrived. The abyss of those who laughed from hell, a deep hole, screams, and figures that blew without body. They laughed from hell. They said it was the invention of priests. But now, live what they called myth, said Brigido. Emily trembled, because he remembered how many times he said jokingly, "If there is hell, I go from a box." She now understood. Words are keys in the spirit world. But I say unto you, of every frivolous word to utter men, They will realize it on the day of judgment. Matthew 12:36. The door of the chosen, a white door. Simple, small, and at the entrance just a name written, Yeshua. Brigida stopped, and with eyes full of reverence he said, "They only go through this door, those who recognized him in life, not for perfection, but by delivery." Emily wanted to run there, but something prevented her. "You are still alive, you still have time, but this door only opens before the last sigh," warned Bridge. "I am the door. If anyone comes in for me, it will be saved. He will come and leave, and find pasture." John 10:9. Emily looked back. It was all too real to be just vision. It was too eternal to be just a dream. And Brigida concluded, "What I showed you, it needs to be told, because many are laughing at death and forgetting that time. It's ending." One last veil torn into the sky, and inside it, there was a watch. No numbers, without pointers, just one sound. Tick, tack. Emily returned to the hospital, but his spiritual body was now marked. In the chest, there was a seal made of light. She didn't know everything yet, but I knew death. It was not the end. It was the beginning of a court, of a battlefield, of a destination, and that she had come back to alert. In the next room, a patient began to cough. His name was Michael, and he was coming in the first hour. Emily looked at him from afar, and in the invisible world, the story was about to repeat itself. In that room, I understand that many never come back. Emily woke up at 3:26 a.m. The doctors could not explain. 7 minutes after the official death, she simply returned. The something had changed. His eyes looked at the ceiling, as if they saw something beyond the structure, and his voice, even weak, muttered the first sentence, "Where is Bridge?" The nurse thought it was delirium, but Emily began to accurately describe things she didn't know. "The next room has a man named Michael. He will die at 4 a.m. if no one pray for him. In the emergency, a lady is being visited by angels, and a 17-year-old is being attacked while sleeping." The doctor hesitated. "You are awake for 3 minutes. How do you know that?" Emily looked deep into his eyes. "Because I was where the eyes don't see. And if you don't pray for your child, he'll continue with nightmares tonight." The doctor paled. In his cord, she was noted that her son had suffered from nocturnal horror for months. Things that the eyes have not seen, nor ears have heard, are the ones that God prepared for those who love him. 1 Corinthians 2:9. The news spread. Patients started asking to see her. Some wanted answers. Others, they were afraid. Emily tried to explain. "I died, but God showed me what happens in the early hours. I saw people trapped in the Valley of Almost. I saw hell being treated as a meme. And I saw, that still has a chance." A lady asked, "Did you see the sky?" Emily hesitated. "I saw the door, but I didn't get in, because not everyone comes back to tell. And who comes back with mission. Go and tell them how great things the Lord has done to you, and how has you had mercy on you." Mark 5:19. In the room, she asked only one thing, a Bible and a mirror, because now I need to look at me and remember I was killed, and I'm alive, for a wire of prayer. Not every soul comes back. Some are taken, even with people praying for them. That morning, Emily's eyes were different. She saw beyond, but what hurt her more was knowing that many wouldn't have the same chance. She asked to talk to Michael, the patient in the next room. The team allowed it, thinking it would be just a gesture of comfort. Emily came close to the bed. Michael, unconscious, breathed with difficulty. She held her hand and said, "You don't know me, but if you can hear me inside, choose the light, because the door is starting to close." And at that moment, the devices began to whistle. Michael was leaving, and Emily saw, with the eyes of her soul, 2 figures by the bed. One dressed in gray with sad eyes, another smiling, but with serpent teeth. "He mocked to the end," said the shadow. "But his grandmother prayed," said the light. And there, the decision was sealed. Michael gave the last breath. And Emily, she cried for someone she never knew. "He who believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned." Mark 16:16. She returned to her own room in silence. Her time was ending too, not because I was going to die again, But because what you saw needed to be said before it was late, she wrote on a sheet, "Don't play with eternity. Hell is more real than pain, but the sky also responds to the knees." And when your mother entered the room, Emily looked at her with her eyes full of peace and said, "Mom, you saved me without knowing. Your cry was my bridge, and now I need more people to know. Behold, I am at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will enter." Revelation 3:20. That night Emily made alive, the first and last. Thousands of people came out of curiosity, but they went silent. She told everything. At 3 hours, Saint Brigid, the court, the voice, the chants, and ended by saying, "Don't wait for the last second to remember God, because not always. The door will be open." If today were your last minute, would you know what comes next? Emily sat in front of the camera. There was no scenario. There was no filter. Just she and the truth. I was killed for 7 minutes, but what I lived was more real than all my years of life. And today, I need to tell you what happens in the first 3 hours after you die, because what was shown to me, it's not a metaphor. It is the spirit world, raw, alive, and ready to judge. She took a deep breath and started. First hour, the confusion. I saw myself out of my body. I listened to everything, but no one heard me. I tried to touch my mother's face, but my hand went through. I was afraid. A cold that was not from the hospital, it was spiritual. I saw figures. One of them had my voice. He imitated me, mocked. I whispered my phrases of denial to God, as if I laughed at me. But I also saw a man standing in the corner of the room. He said nothing, but his eyes shone like fire. Then I understood. It was an angel, waiting for the right prayer to act. Second hour, the judgment. I was taken to a dark place. A throne of fire floated and voices began to list all my mistakes. I wanted to escape, but everything I did gained shape. Lies became snakes, mockery, knives, pride, current ES. Beside me, demons laughed and said, "She's ours." But when my mother prayed, it was like a sword ripped the sky. Third hour, the decision. I heard, "She hasn't been sealed yet." That's when I saw heaven and hell at the same time. The angels began to go down. Some had wings, others looked like soldiers, and the demons began to squirm. One of them shouted, "She said she didn't believe it, now it's late." But a voice replied, "Not yet." And that's when I came back. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the bad days come. Ecclesiastes 12:1. Emily finished the live with wet eyes. You may not believe me, but I know what I saw. And what I saw is that time is over. Do not expect to be pulled from the body to understand the value of a prayer. Don't expect to see demons calling you son to believe they exist. Don't wait, because some don't come back. She looked straight to the camera. If it touched you, right here, rip the veil, sir, because maybe this video is your call, your last, yours now. If you heard here, comments, "Lord, prepare me to find you." Like, share, and send this video to someone you love, because maybe she's still 3 hours. And watch the next content of the screen now, because it may be the continuation of what God wants to talk to you.